Hi, everybody. My name is Pam Smilow. I live in New York City. I'm a painter and I also make prints, do some ceramics, and a lot of mixed media kinds of things. Welcome to our Inspiration Art Group International portfolio presentation. Um, I am going to do things a little bit differently this time. Instead of just presenting my work, I'm going to talk more about my life and how I became an artist, um, and go over some of the circumstances that made me who I am today. Um, let's see. Bridget, can you bring up the first slide, please? Thank you. So I'm going to start with some older work and talk a little bit about what led me to art. I think ever since I was little, I was just drawn to art. I had some very great circumstances. I went to a pilot program at Sarah Lawrence College for nursery school. My mother was into early childhood education. And so I heard from my mom that I just spent the entire time at the easel when I was 3 and 4. And I grew up in a family of artists. My father was a mid-century modern furniture designer by profession, but also painted and sculpted. My mother was not particularly artistic, but was very much into crafts. She taught us to sew and knit, and we did all kinds of art projects at home, including candle making and decoupage, cooking, all kinds of fun things to do, and creative ways of doing things. I also had the amazing fortune to grow up in a Frank Lloyd Wright founded community about an hour north of New York City. It's actually the only fully realized Frank Lloyd Wright community in the world. It was 45 families, cooperative community in Pleasantville, New York. And I had very close relationships with all the families that lived there, and still do actually, and had a lot of figures that I would say would be more like parental figures. We had our own homes, but we spent a lot of time doing things socially as a group, and I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of support growing up for who I was. Let's see. I had also a great high school program. This actually is this saxophone player was a piece I did way back in high school. In my high school, we had filmmaking, we had ceramics, we had etching, we had painting. So I was very, very lucky to have such a great program. Can you go to the next slide, please, Bridget? And then when I went to college, I decided, instead of going to art school, where I think a lot of people go to art school because they need the push and the motivation to work, but I always did art on my own. So I thought I better learn something that I wouldn't do on my own. So I ended up going to the University of Michigan and studying whatever I wanted to, and I ended up with a degree in French by default. Here are this is an early piece of mine, and you can see that I really started with collage, and I relied on the collage image to be the central image of my pieces. And then as I started to gain confidence, I stopped relying so much on the collage as the central image. Could you go to the next slide, please? I experimented a lot in the early years. I did a whole series on kimono shapes. Next. And I was very obsessed with Muybridge, and I did a whole bunch of pieces like this, abstract ones, where I used the Muybridge image as part of my collage. Next. And then I started to get more into painting. And this was a series I did on a necklace that my grandmother gave me, this necklace series. I think what Bridget is going to do in the background is just kind of scroll through the slides maybe every 10 seconds or 15 seconds. And then I'm going to just talk a little bit more about some of my early places where I lived and how I got involved in other things. So basically, in Ann Arbor, I had my first show at the age of 20. And I was mostly showing those collages that I showed before, where I relied more on the central image. And after college, I decided to try and figure out a way where I could make a living without having to spend all my day just working and not having any time to paint. And I heard that there were, it was a good possibility that I could go to Spain and teach English as a second language and not have to work so hard at other jobs. So I ended up doing that, and I lived in my 20s in Spain, in Barcelona, which was a beautiful, very inspirational place to live. And I only, in the end, taught 12 hours a week. And then I had the rest of the time, I rented a studio and really started taking myself seriously as an artist in my 20s. And I did a bunch of shows there in galleries and sort of off the beaten track places. I always was more interested in a way in showing, not in typical galleries. I just never felt very comfortable in the gallery world. It's too sterile, too pristine. And I don't know, I never really enjoyed going to openings. So I ended up showing in different kinds of places, like a jazz club, and I showed in a hairdressing place that was kind of hip in Barcelona. And I did have my share of regular shows. But then after about 5 years living in Spain, I realized that I didn't really want to get old in a culture that wasn't my own. And I thought I really should try and figure out a way to move back to the States. And every summer I had come back and shown work to a gallery outside of New York City. And the woman was kind of a patron of the arts and invited me after showing in her gallery. She bought an old schoolhouse and decided to make it into a theater and artist studio spaces. And she offered me out of the blue a job working for her half-time in her gallery. It was in Somers, New York. And then having part of the payment be my studio. And anyway, I ended up doing that, coming back to the States and working for her for a number of years. And then also running, kind of managing a little bit the building as well. At that point, I was in my early 30s, and I met my husband, who was from Denmark and who was living. He came to visit his brother in New York and ended up staying. And I ended up meeting him. He was a potter at that point, although he did other kinds of art too. But he was a potter, and behind the gallery where I was working, there was a pottery studio. He used to come in and make phone calls. And that's when I met him, and it went on from there. And then he started working in my studio. I had a big press at that point, an etching press, one of the best, like a Charles Brandt 36 by 60 inch press, etching press. And he started making prints in my studio and hanging out there with me. And anyway, we ended up collaborating. Even in those early years, we started working together, and it was pretty cool. We also did a lot of ceramics together. He set up a ceramic studio in the basement of this building. And it was the beginning of a really wonderful marriage. He ended up kind of navigating away from ceramics and doing more painting and printmaking. And we ended up with just having a really nice life together. We ended up having a kid. He had a child from a previous marriage, so we ended up with 2 kids. So anyway, I explained a little bit that I didn't love the whole gallery world, and by sheer accident, some things happened in my life that really changed the course of my life. A friend of mine invited me to do a show in her home in Berkeley, California, right after a huge fire had burnt down an entire hill of 3,000 homes. It's one of the biggest firestorms on the West Coast. This was back in 1991. And so she came to my studio. We re-met at our 20th high school reunion. And she came to my studio and she said, why don't I come and do a show in her home? All the neighbors lost everything. They've all rebuilt their homes. This was a year afterwards. There was a lot of insurance money. And she would do a show in her home and invite all the people around. And that opened up a whole different way for me and my husband to sell our work. And it was actually really fantastic. It ended up being the way all these years, 30 years later, 40 years later, I don't even keep track. We ended up selling our work in that way, where we do kind of the equivalent of trunk shows in people's homes and bring our work in rolls. So when I say there were sort of a lot of accidents that happened that led us this way. So I mentioned that my husband was Danish and we used to go back and forth to Europe a lot. We also never worked with our work stretched. We always push-pinned it to the wall. I did that because I liked to have the hard surface underneath my canvases, and then we would stretch the pieces once we sold them afterwards. So that worked in our favor. We also couldn't afford stretchers at the beginning, so we just rolled our pieces. And so given that, we were mobile and we could, go places and show our work in people's homes and actually hold things up for people to see, taking the guesswork out of buying art. And we realized that a lot of selling has to do with the relationship that you have with your clients. And they like to meet the artists. They like to have an intimate relationship with different artists, and it brings more meaning to the work. So that worked in our favor also. And then I will say that a third factor was growing up in that Frank Lloyd Wright founded community and being very interested in what my work did in the bigger picture. So I make my own paintings, but I also really care where they hang. I feel like I'm interested in architecture. I'm interested in the interiors. And so I feel that you might have a beautiful piece of art, but if you put it next to something that outweighs it or put it in the wrong shape wall, you're not going to show off the art. And so I've become, I think, proficient at finding the right spots for my art, and being interested in creating an atmosphere outside of just the actual piece of art. I also feel that I'm lucky in that my work also contributes very much to the atmosphere of a room. Not all art does that, but my kind of art does do that. And so I'm lucky for that reason. Bridget, can we switch over now to my website for a minute? I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. Bridget? Oh, okay, good. We're here. Great. So can you scroll down a little bit, please? Or do I need to do that? Sorry, I'm not so good at this kind of thing. Oops. Sorry. Is there any way to scroll down?
No, Pam, I think you have to scroll down on your computer.
Oh, I do, but it's not doing it.
We can't control that button.
Okay. So how does that work? It's not really allowing me to scroll down.
Could you go to that page?
All
right, let's go back to your slide a little bit, and we're going to open up your website on our own, Bridget.
Okay.
And then we can control that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I think what I was hoping to show, but we can keep going with this stuff, is what I was hoping to show at that point was my work hanging, and some of my husband's work also, hanging in people's homes. And a lot of times I got involved in helping people choose the right pieces for their space. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that on my website. Okay, let's see if we can do that. Can we click onto each image, or is that not possible? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so some of this, there is for people there, most of these slides are people's homes. But in this case, the first slide is actually a website called artrooms.com, I think it is. And it basically gives you settings for you to superimpose your art on people's walls. And that was actually something really terrific during the pandemic, because in this case, they gave you the setting. But in a lot of times when I do commission work for people, and I would say I do about 30% or 30% of my work is commission work, where somebody might see something they like and then they have a spot and they want me to do something along those same lines. I do a lot of series work, so that kind of work is easy for me to do. Let's say, in this case, these are 3 tree pieces, and it's an ongoing series that I've been doing for a long time now with different kind of collage elements to it. But somebody can send me a photo of their wall and the room around it, and then I can superimpose my art onto it and take the guesswork out of buying art. Okay, can we go to the next one? See if you can, yeah. So this is actually one of my husband's pieces. This is a home in Berkeley, California. And actually, my husband, I didn't mention, my husband sadly passed away in 2013 of an aneurysm. It was really devastating in a lot of ways, especially because we did collaborate a lot together and we shared a studio. But anyway, this piece of his, which I really, really love, ended up in the New York Times Magazine section on his birthday a year after he died. So it was an article on house envy. So it was one person was admiring the house of somebody else, and they showed photos of that. And then that person was admiring the home of someone else. And it was kind of a series like that. And this piece, as I said, ended up as one of the images. Next. This is another piece of mine. It's okay. You can go let's just scroll a little more. You can go through the next one. It's okay. You can scroll down to the next slide. Yep. Okay, these are more of my tree pieces. And in this case, again, this is where they give you the setting. And I superimposed my art into that. Next. That also is another one of these settings. I think a lot of these at the beginning are that setting. You can see the different ways. But I think, it's amazing when you start working with this kind of thing, how much you realize that a piece really changes the whole atmosphere of a room. You can keep scrolling down if you want. Let's see. Okay, let's go to the white piece on the left. This is a site-specific piece that I did for somebody in East Hampton. These pieces are 120 inches tall. Next. This is an apartment downtown New York City. This piece, if you can see, you probably can't tell right now, but after my husband died, I started writing his name underneath the paintings. And writing quotes under there as well. And so that was sort of the beginning of me doing that. And I do that a lot, where it's the writing is obscured, but it kind of comes through. Next. Okay, this is one of my dad's chairs. This is sort of a funny thing. This is fabric from an African village that a friend of mine gave me to cover a chair with for an auction that she was doing, and we donated my dad's chair, and that's one of my paintings in the background. Next. By the way, I don't think I mentioned to anybody, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to write in the comment section, or although I can't really even see that, but maybe Bridget or uh, Bibiana can see it and ask me, or we can have a session at the end for people to ask questions. Oh, yeah. Thank you. This is a picture of my husband. I just thought I'd include there. This is, we did a lot of giant rice paper pieces together. This is one of his, actually, but we collaborated on a lot of these pieces that are mixed media. They start with a beautiful piece of kind of thick rice paper, and then we would water down acrylic and go over that, and then we would run it through the press a number of times as a monoprint, painting on plexiglass and then running it through the press. Next. That's actually someplace in I think it's Palo Alto. This is another apartment, New York City. Again, you can sort of see the writing underneath. I did a lot of things after he died to kind of make him live on. One of them was that, writing a lot of things underneath about him. And then I also put together a traveling exhibit of his work, which started out at the Danish consulate. He had over 50 paintings hanging in the Danish consulate for about 3 years. And then that show ended up traveling to the Museum of Danish America in Elkhorn, Iowa, in the middle of nowhere. And then it traveled to the Scandinavian Heritage Foundation in Portland, Oregon. Then it came back to New York to the Schoolhouse Theater and the studio spaces where we used to work. And then my dream come true, I actually got him a museum show in Denmark. And that show opened just September of 2019 and closed at the end of January 2020, literally just 2 weeks before the museum closed because of the pandemic. So we really lucked out time-wise, and it was really amazing. What kind of artist did your husband resonate with, or was he just avant-garde? You know what? Garrett was very avant-garde, I would say. And he really did his own work, very original work. That's a whole nother discussion that I maybe could do. We keep going because I think there are some more of his pieces in this slide presentation. Let's see if we can find. Oh, this is the first collaborative piece we did together. This we did, I think, in the late 80s. And it's a building in downtown White Plains, and it hung there until literally about 4 months ago. And I think it's a fantastic piece. This is all monoprinted on Reeves BFK paper that was pieced together. Each one of those blocks is a separate piece of paper that has then been mounted onto canvas. We did a lot of work, and I do a lot of work on paper and then mount it onto canvas. I just kind of like to work on paper more than canvas most of the time, or some of the time. I do a lot of canvas as well, but next. This is one of my pieces. I made this piece for that spot. This used to hang in Lafayette, California, and then the family moved to Rye, New York. I never really saw where it hung in Rye, but it's kind of a signature piece of mine. I do sort of these floating natural nature elements on this kind of background. I've done them in many different colorations, and this one is probably my most popular type series of what I do. Next. It also works in a traditional setting as well as a more contemporary setting. Yeah, let's do the next slide. This is something, I do all kinds of different types of things. This piece is actually, I found this antique botanical book in an antique store in Denmark. And I think it was a German book, actually. And I scanned the image in. Actually, Bibiana scanned them in for me, and then blew them up and then collaged on top of them. So I call them contemporary botanicals. I think, but I love botanicals, but I think they can be a little boring. So I tried to jazz them up, and I've done a whole series. And then I actually made them into all kinds of products as well. My husband always wanted to make products. So one of the things I think I did when he passed away was to try and come up with a line of products related to our art. Next. Okay, this is a painting I did. I actually told them to buy those pillows afterwards. As I said, I'm very interested in creating a whole atmosphere, not just the painting in and of itself. Next. Yeah, this again, I did site specific for the customer. This is probably the biggest collector of my work in California. It's a woman who bought my work beginning when I used to show in a gallery, Elaine Horwich Galleries, which she had 4 locations. One of them was in Santa Fe, one was in Palm Springs. And this woman, who is a psychologist, bought my art way back in the early 80s or the mid 80s. And she owns a lot of my work. I love her taste. I love her sensibility, and one of my favorite clients. Next. This is a modular type of piece that I do a lot of. I call it my Flower Power piece series. Basically, I take a Reeves BFK 22 by 30 size paper, cut it in half, and then play around with patterns in different images. And they're more about color vibrations than anything else. And I've done them in lines like this horizontally. I've done them vertically as well. And I like fooling around. They look really kind of easy, but they're actually more complicated than a lot of my other paintings, because it's a little bit like poetry. If you get the wrong word, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Okay, is there any way to do that? To blow up the images a little bit more, Bridget, or not really? Yeah, maybe. Does that help? I could also go back to the slideshow. Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah. There are collage elements in that as well. Okay, next. That's not my daughter. That's one of my clients' daughters. That kid was so cool. When I did a show at her parents' house, they were in Woodland Hills. It's near LA, I think. And I did a show in their house. And this kid, she was so savvy, and she helped me do this whole presentation. I should talk a little bit about how I do that. So when I do a show in somebody's home, and again, I said that's really the principal way I sell my art. I go in there. I usually bring about 4 rolls of canvases, about 10 to 12 canvases in each roll. So I bring a lot of work with me. And then I bring paper pieces, probably about, I don't know, 30, 40 paper pieces. I lay out the canvases on the floor in one big pile, like Persian carpets, basically. And I need a big enough expanse. Most of my big paintings are about 50 by 80, something like that. So I lay out the canvases in one big pile, and then I basically kind of go like this, like they do in a rug store, and go through the canvases. And people will gather around and look and ask questions. And then usually what happens, most of the time, people don't just buy a piece right like that. And I encourage them to make an appointment with me, and then I go into their homes with the art that they've chosen and hold up things and show them how something will change the room, if it's this painting or it's that painting. And I've been doing that for over 30 years now, and it's very satisfying for me. I get to see where my work hangs. I get to see how good it might look somewhere. And I get to have a relationship with people, because when I'm working in my studio, I'm more or less by myself at this point. So it's a win-win situation, I think, for everybody. Anyway, this kid was telling everybody. She was kind of doing my work for me and talking about the art. It was really great. She's now grown up. Anyway, next. Okay, that's my daughter. That's probably the best collaboration I did. That's one of my husband's later pieces. He's kind of wild with color. I'm more very subdued with color, and he was the opposite, totally wild, picking every color in the book, odd combinations sometimes. And anyway, next. My daughter's now 29. This is a rice paper piece that is collaborative in that that green image of the flower is one of my images, and then we shared some of the linoleum. So basically, the process here again is rice paper and then a watered down acrylic. So some of that green in the background is watered down acrylic. The yellow and the orange are actually mono printed on there. And then on top, the linoleum prints go on top of that. So this has been through the press a number of times. And we did a lot of large scale rice paper pieces over the years. Okay, next. Okay, good. This is another one of my paintings. A lot of repeat imagery, circles, moons. I always, most of the time, always have a moon in my pieces, houses. I rely a lot on images that, like very childlike images. I'm much more of an intuitive painter. I don't really know what I'm doing ahead of time, and I just kind of work it out on the canvas. The more layers and the more mistakes I make, I think the richer the pieces look. And I don't really think when I'm working. In fact, I can talk, I can have somebody in my studio and I can talk with them and work at the same time and feel like it's a completely separate muscle what I'm doing with my art and what I'm doing talking to them. And neither one really interferes with the other. It's kind of interesting. Next. Okay, again, another piece. I didn't tell them to put that piece of cloth on there or the coral, which I have mixed feelings about, but I think it goes really nicely as a, I think it looks good all together. Next. Okay, I don't know why that's out of focus, but those are 3 trees that I did site specific for a home in somewhere in California. Next. Oh, there we go. Now it's more in focus. I've done many, many, many of these tree pieces, all different types of trees, different collage elements. I really love doing these pieces. They're fun to do for me. Right now, I'm actually working on 5 different ones, 2 for an office, 3 for an office in Boston, and 2 for a home in Seattle. That's what's on my wall right now in my studio. Next. Okay, this is going back a little bit. This is a collaborative piece that I did with my husband. It's called Mother and Child. And we did a lot of animal pieces together. And I think we're going to come up on some of them in a minute. But this is an early one. This one I think I did in the probably late 80s, early 90s with him. Some of the first pieces we did together. I think it's kind of a sweet piece. This is actually a home of an artist herself who bought a lot of our work. And you can see on the shelf to the right, that's one of her ceramic pieces. Her name is Marilyn Ricada, and she's really a great artist if you ever want to look her up. Richeda, Marilyn. Next. So another thing that I do is because I spent a lot of time early on with Gert when he was making more ceramics, we would work in Germany in a ceramic studio. So he would be working on ceramics and I would be painting or working. So I've done a bunch of paintings related to ceramic shapes. I also know how to work on the wheel, and I realized there's so many ugly shapes that one can produce on the wheel. So I was always kind of in search of the perfect ceramic vessel shape. That's what these pieces are. And they're actually done on a rice paper that has kind of a, I'm not sure if it's it's sort of hieroglyphics in the background. The paper itself I bought. I didn't make those hieroglyphics, but then I collaged on top of them and painted on top of them. Next. Okay, yeah, this is what I wanted to show you before. These pieces we started doing, my husband and I, in the early, let's see, probably in the 90s, early 90s. We were showing at Elaine Horwich Galleries again, and this particular show that we first did was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they had a show on homelessness, and we did a series based on shelter. And so we had all kinds of like tents and houses and different kinds of shelter. And we did a series of 20 of them in these little frames like that. So it was in a grid. And they used to call it their magic wall, that we put up a set of 20 and they would sell. And then we'd do another set of another subject matter like vessels or animals or kitchen series or whatever, and sell them in sets like that. And we did a lot of those. And then basically for the last, I don't know, 15 years, let's say, I made these, we did a whole series of animals. And then instead of selling the originals, we decided to keep the originals together for ourselves. And we made prints out of them and sold them quite inexpensively. These little prints sell for $150 each. They're not limited edition. And we sell a lot of these. And it's kind of our bread and butter, or was our bread and butter for Garrett. He no longer needs the money. I do. But anyway, next. We've done, I want to say one more thing about the animals. They're all kind of, the top one, Fish on Wheels, that's a really big seller. Second one is an orange dog. That one also sells. That one actually looks like a dog, but the Fish on Wheels doesn't really look like a fish. And lots of times things don't look exactly the way they are in real animals. The bottom one we call koala cat because it looks a little bit like a koala bear and a cat. So none of them really represent the real animal. And we actually made it into a memory card game, which is probably maybe one of our biggest sellers of the products. And if anyone is interested in seeing any of our products, they're on my website, PamelaSmilow.com, in the art shop section. But it's my favorite product of what we make. They're really nice cards that you lay out. There are 24 images, 48 cards. You lay them out and try and find pairs. And when you get to be my age, it's good practice to try and remember where things are. And I think it's great for grandparents to play with their grandkids. You're on equal footing totally. And anyway, it's a great game. Next. Oh, yeah, that's the same, I think. Okay. Just another setting. You can kind of skip by that. Wasn't my most favorite installation. It's fine, but okay, here you can see these modular pieces again. You can see them a little bit closer maybe. This is where you can see all the circles are collage elements, and then it's paint and it's collage. And a lot of these Flower Power series that I call them kind of work on a clash. So they're about how color vibrates with each other. And I think normally you probably wouldn't put that green on the left, the white green next to the green gold on the right bottom, but they look great together, I think. And the towel on the dog just looked good too. And the dog. I like that picture a lot. Next. Another one of a different type of piece that I do, again, based on sort of that modular idea. Sorry, it's not the best slide, I guess, when it's blown up. But again, similar themes, trees, moons, kind of that canoe shape. Yeah. Next. Same modular idea, lots of color. It's a house Mid-Coast, California. I think it's Saratoga, California. Next. This was actually a gallery in Maine. Again, that modular idea, and then another painting, similar themes. I used to use a lot of ladders in my work. Patterns, again, houses, very simple, sort of intuitive, childlike imagery. Next. Same thing. This is actually a boutique hotel in Berkeley, California. Over the bed, there was actually a very traditional fern, 3 ferns, kind of botanical, very, very sort of subdued and old-fashioned in a way. And I took it as a challenge to make a contemporary piece that could go with those. And I really like mixing. I don't think, if you have a traditional home, I think oftentimes landscape paintings don't quite contribute to an atmosphere the way a more contemporary painting might. And so I really believe that it's great to mix all different kinds of styles. Next. These are some linoleum prints that we did. These are collaborative, my husband and I again. We made them more or less in I think 8 by 10 inch linoleum pieces. And then these got blown up for a restaurant in Katona, New York. But we did I think 12 of this kitchen series. Just plain black ink on paper. Next. This was kind of a fun project. This is the only bar mitzvah that ever took place on Ellis Island. And it was during a hurricane, basically. And I knew the person whose son was having the bar mitzvah. And she asked me, she brought to our studio one day these tablecloths. And she said she really would love it if Garrett and I could paint these tablecloths. And then she would end up giving them as gifts to people. And we loved the kid who was being bar mitzvahed. And we thought, great, we'll do it. And we did. And we did 5 tablecloths. And then the rest were kind of interspersed with just plain tablecloths. But it looked really, really cool. And yeah, there was some fish on here and different kinds of themes, but all the same coloration, which was sort of a winning combination. I think this yellow and then the green gold and a little bit of purple and kind of a beige. Next. Again, these actually are my husband's linoleum prints. I think it might take a minute to get into focus, if it ever does. Yeah, this was an architectural firm in Menlo Park, California. We sell a lot of our work. I still sell a lot of our work on the West Coast. I think people entertain more in their homes, so they're more interested in getting art for their homes. And in New York, I think a lot of people go out a lot, so they're not as interested and the homes aren't as big. We also sell a lot of work in Texas. We just did a show in Seattle, 2 shows actually, one on an island. Again, all home shows. Next. This was site-specific over a stairwell in, can't even remember the name of the town, somewhere also in California, Portola Valley, California. Next. This again is going back to that series that I told you was my most popular series. This is a Pilates studio in Marin County, California. Sorry, it's a little out of focus. The machines are in focus. Next. It's one of my husband's pieces. Again, combining different kinds of mixed media, paint mono printing, and then linoleum on top. He did a lot of that kind of stuff. This woman actually went completely berserk and bought, I think, 30 of his pieces. That was really something, I tell you. Next. This again is that same atmospheric flower-powered type piece, and it's a waiting room of a psychiatric clinic, New York hospital. More or less color studies. Next. You can't really, you can sort of zero in, but these are some of the black and white kitchen series and some other kinds of pieces. You can see some strawberries. There's a bird and bowls and a teapot. And a lot of this stuff, like all the prints, the kitchen series prints and the animal prints are also, you can see if you wanted to look at them a little better on the website in the art shop section under Giclée prints. I never really got into Giclée prints at all until my husband died. And then I kind of freaked out and decided I didn't want to sell any of his art. And that lasted for a few years. So I started making prints of some of the things that I thought maybe I would want to part with, that I could part with in print form. And then these little animal ones and the little kitchen series ones we did with Giclées as well. But I always thought, why am I making a Giclée print? I'm just competing against myself. Anyway, next. Again, one of the oversized rice paper pieces done by my husband. Same technique. Next. That's a house in Berkeley again. This is also, again, that same Flower Power series, playing a little bit more on clashing and colors that are in the same family. Geert's work was more millions of colors, and I usually stayed in the same family of color. Next. This is an older collaborative piece he and I did together for a law firm in Palo Alto. I love this piece. I have no idea where it is anymore because the office closed. Hope it's in a good spot. It's one of the really big pieces we did. Next. Again, vessel series. More of that modular idea. This is actually in a house in Usonia, where I grew up. If you want to look up that community, it's pretty interesting, I think. It's in Pleasantville, New York, 45 homes, beautiful. 3 of them were designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and then the rest were disciples of Frank Lloyd Wright. It's interesting, I think, to read about it. Next. Another site-specific piece I made here for in Los Gatos, California. Big painting. Okay, maybe this is actually a good point to stop and maybe ask if there are any questions or anything like that. I don't want to overdose people. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Pam, your work is incredible.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been really inspired.
Oh, that's the nicest thing you could say to me. Thank you.
It's just not the creativity, but it's I think I've seen your work, but I've never seen the body of work.
Yes.
And I have your book, Living with Art, with you and your husband. But seeing this, it really comes to life with you talking about it.
Thank you. I don't know how good a public speaker I am, but.
And I love your format.
Yeah.
I want to show people one of the first piece I brought from Get and Pen when I've met it. This is a Get piece.
Yeah.
And
We did. Those are collaborations, actually.
the
Yeah.
cooperation. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Never know
Yeah.
that. You know, it was on the thing because one of those, iconic.
Yes. Well,
Pottery
we made
shape
these
that you did.
amphora pieces
Yeah.
with the pointed bottoms, and then we made stands for them.
Right. That's how I connect to them. I mean, I love seeing this. You can see this woman, she had injury on her knee, and I got hit by the car, and that's how I got say, oh, I need to have this piece, and that's started our friendship for 30 some years.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah. You know what, Bibiana? I have one of those pieces myself that is not just the raw terracotta. It has glaze on it. But I don't have any of those pieces anymore. There's so much of our work that I don't have anymore that it's nice that you have it. It's nice to see that again. It brings back
Yesterday, I went into the archival room with Tanya, and I also found another painting of Guest that he painted of the white vessel. I have that painting. I think I photographed you. And then
really?
one of the paper mache animals too and stuff. And some of your paintings.
Yeah, we did. We've done, being married to another artist was really a great thing. We really helped each other, inspired each other, worked together, and kept each other going. And I really owe him, if I hadn't been married to him, I think I would have taken a teaching job. And he just encouraged me not to. And it was the best thing I could have done, because teaching is a whole nother profession and it takes a lot of energy. And I think that, I reserve that energy for, to be able to just put it into my work.
Pam, I really enjoyed your presentation and hearing about your life. It's very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled. I don't know.
Pam, I just found it terrific to watch the way you presented in a concise way from early life, how your influence work, and the evolution of it. It's a wonderful chance to see the thread that runs through it, the symbolism, and the person that ties it together because it comes from you. So there is a unity in all of that diverse work. You inspired me a year ago to start painting with canvas on the wall.
Good.
Sketcher strips and this and that. I presented the botanical work. And you said to me,
I remember that.
Just staple it up on the wall and do it. And I have been doing that ever since. And it's been very liberating. I love it. Curious about how you attach paper to canvas. What adhesive do you use?
Yes, I use, so you'd have to ask my framer that really, because I think some people do it differently than others. I've done it myself with jade adhesive, which is like a PV, whatever you call that glue. Jade adhesive, JADE. But I just bought out, New York Central, the art supply store in New York.
Oh, it's gone, yes.
When they closed, I bought out their whole supply. And guess what? I'm on my last bottle now.
Of the jade adhesive?
Adhesive. But I think you can find it other places. And it is a white glue. It's that, what is it called, that white glue? PVA or PH something, or I can't remember the name right now.
PVA glue.
PVA glue, yeah. So it's like that. But basically what I would do is I would stretch a raw canvas on a stretcher. I usually use the number 12 cotton duck. And then I buy my canvas in rolls. And then I would, that's it. Yeah, something like that. It's not exactly that, but that works. And then, so I stretch another canvas on a stretcher, and then I put the glue on the canvas, the raw canvas, and then roll the roll the paper down and just keep smoothing it out as I go. And you just
Okay.
have to, and then I put it upside down and I put books so that it, dries that way. But mostly my framer does it. And I think some of them even do like dry mounting or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how they do it, to be honest with you. If you're interested, you could talk to the framer, and maybe he's in
I'll talk to
California.
the one in town and see, if he's
Yeah, if
familiar.
you want to ask me about it, you can always call me and I can connect you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All my trees are like that. All my big trees. Pam, you're a badass. We've learned so much more about you, and so happy that I could make it to a group meet finally and hear the stories of your life in art. No idea who said that I'm a badass, but thank you. I guess that's a good thing. I think let's see. Yeah, I just saw a comment, but then it went away.
Oh.
Okay, no, after that. Okay, it doesn't matter. Can you guys give me any feedback about my presentation? Because I'm going to be presenting at a spa, at a place in Mexico, and I'm going to give a talk. And I don't have a lot of experience with public speaking or anything. Can you guys give me any feedback on like this presentation, or just if you have any, honest, I'm not touchy.
Pam, I thought this presentation was very good, and I thought it grabbed my attention because
Was it too long?
No,
No,
I don't think so at all.
When I stopped, were you ready for me to stop, or should I have gone on?
We're still going, Pam.
We're on live now.
Yeah, we're live.
No, I know, but I think you know what? I've never been the type to hide things. I mean, I know we're live, but
I didn't know we were live.
Yeah, well, I think it's great. I mean, we're artists, there's like not secrets for things, and I just think I like the process of it also.
I have one suggestion for me personally. Listening to you makes me hungry to see the art clearly. And some of the slides, the art was so far away, you couldn't see it. And I found, it wasn't relevant. It gave me an idea, but if you're presenting to an audience who really wants to know you and see your art, I would choose only the slides that you can either blow up or see in detail and clearly.
Okay,
I
that's
think
great.
I don't know, but that's just me.
No,
mean that it's
very good.
valid.
I put this together kind of quickly, and I didn't realize, when it's blown up, that it can be out of focus, some of the things and stuff. So I have to be really careful.
But that's just me. It doesn't mean that
No,
it's valid.
it's important. I value that, definitely.
Something to think about.
Corey, I agree with what you're saying, but I also really enjoyed seeing the work in places.
I love
I
that.
enjoyed seeing the surroundings. So both, yeah.
That was my
I
favorite
love
part.
seeing that. And I love that there's actually a site that you can show clients the site and what work would look like on their walls. That's brand new to me. I mean, does anybody else have that or used it?
I have seen it. I have not used it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. The way that I sell my art, honestly, I think more artists should do it like I do it. Because basically, it's when you sell like that, you go into somebody's home, they invite their friends. So you're not bringing people, they're bringing people. So you are growing your circle.
Right.
And it's a really nice, I'm very into the informal. And I really like the connection that you make when you have this kind of an event. And everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. People, like when they go to a party at somebody's house, they love that this is a different kind of a thing to do. And if you don't mind talking about your art, I mean, I basically sit on the floor and go. I bring somebody with me to help me, an assistant, because I can't carry the work anymore like I used to. So I travel with an assistant. I just got back from Seattle where I did 2 shows there. And I hit the jackpot with one woman, this wonderful woman that I know. She invited so many people, and it was a 2-day open house, and it was just a wonderful event for me and for selling and for the people, that came. Something different to do.
And Pam, you are also so good at that. I've been to so many and see you because you make people comfortable. You are such a people person too. You make people comfortable, and you're not over pushing by your art, and your art speak to itself anyway. Both your and guest art, so it's easy to sell. But I do remember one time you told me that you do sell more your work in the West Coast because they have modern house and it's bigger, and people in New York seem to be more conservative.
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are not conservative at this point in New York, but I don't really have access to that crowd here in New York. So I sell more just by kind of contacts that I've had that grow and grow on the West Coast. And it involves a lot of work. There's a lot of schlepping involved. Yeah.
Pam, I wanted to comment with regard to the artrooms.com.
Yes.
I thought that was absolutely fabulous because seeing the work in different settings, seeing the art in different settings, you see the change in mood.
Yes.
The change in atmosphere.
Yes.
See how it works with different colors. I love that. I thought I learned a lot.
Yes.
Just by seeing how art can transform a space.
Well, yeah, not everybody's art can do that. If it's a tiny little piece, on a huge wall, you're not going to have the same effect. But I'm also a real stickler for size. I will say that also. I find if you have a big wall, you really need to put a big piece of art on there. If you put little pieces, you can do it little, but a lot of times that just looks cluttered. And I think a lot of people don't buy big art because the process is daunting. How do you get it to try? You don't know what's going to look like. People buy art when they're on vacation and they can't carry it home or whatever. So the service, I provide a real service to people, not just my art, but I really make it easy for them to buy art.
Wow.
Been very enlightening, Pam.
Oh yeah, that's the game. That's my favorite. You want to show them one of the cards?
Yeah, see it, and you open up in a nice box. I have purchased that to a lot of children I know, the age they can play this, and it's a memory game. So you have 2 of each pieces, and you put in the back. It's like this, and then you have here's the fish on wheel. Yep. And I think Gail and I was doing that. I used to draw fish with the rollerblade, and he put big wheel and things. And
wow, I didn't realize.
Yeah. And there's just things, numbers of animals, and you just match them. It's
So
like a
Pam,
little
you said
miniature
that
art you can play
you
with.
can buy those on your website?
Yeah.
Yeah, on her website you can buy all of those things.
Oh,
And
cool.
scarf.
I didn't go into the products. My husband always wanted to make products, and we just never kind of got deep into it. And when he died, I just decided, maybe we should do that. So I have a whole bunch of products related to our art, his art and my art. Most of mine are botanicals, but the game, the memory game, is my favorite. And what you don't see there is that the cards are so nice to touch. They're thick and they feel really good in your hand. And I play by myself. I mean, I like time myself.
It's like concentration. They're all- yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I
Oh
love
my-
that.
I'm gonna get this for my grandkids. I love that.
Yeah.
And here's a scarf.
Oh, Bibiana.
I know, showing all the same. I
I should
carry
pay
my
you for
purse since
advertising.
October. That, and a scarf of one Pam's painting. And then it's a silk scarf. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Pam,
just
I really enjoyed that a lot. It was different. I didn't expect that much information as far as like how you sell your work, and I thought that was really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I have to go. But you asked the question about when you make this presentation again, how long was it? Too long or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah, I think an hour is plenty of time, and then you can do some answering, questions and stuff like you're doing now.
Yes. Was it, how long was it?
It
that
was
I
about
taught?
an hour. Yeah.
It was a full hour, and it wasn't. You weren't like, oh my God, I wish she'd finish.
No.
Oh no! Actually, I was really enjoying it. Yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah.
It's actually to now it's 1 hour.
Okay.
So your presentation was shorter.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do when I do the presentation for this spa is I'm going to start with where I grew up, because there are some really, I want to show some pictures of where I grew up and some of the homes there, and then go into, kind of the how my life ended up working out.
Well, thank you so much. It's good seeing
Thank
you
you,
guys.
Jackie.
I have to leave. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
Oh.
Pam. I too have to leave.
Okay.
This was
So
a
thanks
wonderful-
everybody
Say one
for
thing
coming.
I want to say one thing about this. So the Inspiration Art Group, if you're interested in finding out more, or you want to be part of part of it and present your work, or just come and look and listen to other people presenting their work, the website is inspirationartgroup.org. And if you go, here's that the code. You can hold your phone up and get to the website through that code. We are meeting once every month, the first Wednesday of every month, beginning in April, and I'm going to be the moderator for the whole series. And if you want to be a presenter, just please go to the website and email us from there, and we can go from there. I think it's just a really nice format for artists to get together and talk and share recipes in a way, or just have some feedback about their work. And I just did it a little bit differently this time. Instead of just presenting the work, I thought it would be maybe more interesting just to talk a little bit about how I became an artist and a little bit more about my life. But some people can just go straight into their work and get a critique.
All right.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much, everybody,
you.
for coming and listening. And that was great.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for all the feedback.
Presented. Thank you.
Bye.